Right, here we go. I'm going to do a little intro now. Welcome to a very special episode of One More Thing, where we are about to dig deep into our very first paid release EP. This is a monumental moment now. We've been doing free downloads. We did a various artist compilation, which was a paid release around about this time, kind of last year. But this is the first proper EP and the first of quite a few as well. I'm really excited about it. We've got somebody who is a friend of the platform, a massive supporter of the platform, and has been on the platform before. We've actually released your music before, haven't we, Jake? So everybody who's watching, thank you very much for watching. It's Skorpion. How are you doing, man?
Good, man. Thank you for inviting me back. And I can't believe that you would pick me for the first paid release, especially with all the skill coming up on the EPs later. I feel really honored, and it's just great to be able to work with you on something again after last year.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a really special EP as well. It's something very different from you. But first, let's kind of catch up on where you've been. As you were on the website, we released the Shadows on our free download compilation, which is at the very, very end of 2022. And then you appeared then on the site in January and you did a mix as well. You preemptively sent me like an all productions mix. And it was a really great way of kind of getting to know you as well, because you just sent the mix out of the blue. It's like, wow, okay. And we had some feedback and I got to know your story and everything. And yeah, I mean, that was kind of pretty much 18 months ago. How have you been since then?
Yeah, it's been a while, huh? I guess that was really great for me because I had really been working with smaller imprints and labels and things that don't really have as much, I guess, recognition within the scene that we call drum and bass, which is very close knit and sometimes picky, even you could say, I guess, you know. So releasing on the VA was amazing, and that track ended up doing really well on Spotify, getting onto like some big gym playlists and stuff, which sort of started boosting my streaming numbers. And ever since then,
Wow.
I've been kind of steadily sitting at around 10,000 monthly listeners, which is a great number. Trying to boost that up here eventually with some more releases. But I'm happy to be in that sort of stage where the algorithm has picked me up a little bit. And I thank you a lot for that. And then, yeah, with the
Wow.
live shows, that worked really well. I introduced Stamina on the interview, and then I was able to get a gig there playing a neurofunk set at a non neurofunk event. So that was great to be able to do that.
Wow.
And after that, other opportunities started popping up. And by the end of the year last year, I was able to play at 5 or 6 different, weekly D&B events across West Coast here, including Respect down in LA, which is probably the biggest one where all the big names go through from the UK and everywhere across Europe even. So just the
Yeah.
opportunities came, and it was so much fun. Yeah, I have to thank the Momentive
Wow.
guys for that, obviously. Releasing on the Momentive label VA, and then they got a Respect takeover to promote that, and they invited me down to finish off the night with some neurofunk. So that was super fun, and you should be expecting to get a mix from them as well soon. So watch out for that in your inbox. I told them the same thing. I said, just shoot it over to Dave. He likes people of action.
Yes, yes, I do. Sometimes it takes a little bit of pushing because you were one of the very first people when I asked for music and I said, right, I'm going to release some music. You were one of the very first people, but I was working my way back down through the inbox. So because you were so keen, you ended up kind of being right at the back of the queue, and you nudged me a few times and then sent the mix. It took patience, and yeah, I do love it when people send stuff to me unsolicited and take action in that way. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get back, but
Yeah.
I don't think there's any harm in that. There's that nothing needs to be completely immediate. But I think that's amazing. I mean, big up, like you just mentioned, like Stamina, and Respect. Like
Yeah.
these are two churches for drum and bass in North America. They've been running longer than any nights have in the UK. You know,
Yeah.
that's
People don't
that's
really
how
realize
dedicated.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's how dedicated people are in North America. Like it's a smaller scene in terms of it's not quite so mainstream, but the people who are into it, they're properly into it, aren't they?
Absolutely. That's what I've realized. And that's something I realized more this weekend talking to people at this festival as well, is just the people who really love the drum and bass. There's a core group of them, and they're putting on these underground events, and there's no marketing or promotion for them, but they exist. There might only be 20 or 30 people there, but it's 20 or 30 people who really want to hear what you have to play. And that's a lot
Yeah.
more fun than clearing a dance floor at a mainstream event because they're not playing house or techno. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or watching people kind of not really get what you're doing, or yeah, not engaging with you or anything. I'd much rather a smaller, passionate, engaged crowd who know you could see the whites of their eyes and they know what's coming and they really, yeah, egging you on then as much as you're performing to them and stuff like that. That's
oh,
amazing. You've also been on a super, super cool label as well, really, really recently, haven't you? Tell us all about your appearance on Space Yacht.
Yeah, definitely. Space Yacht. I've been looking at trying to release with them for a while because they're kind of, I guess, one of the eminent, not their eminent label in terms of releases. Their releases have been played by some big names like Excision and things like that. But they've been usually sticking to more dubstep kind of rhythmy stuff. But I did hear that they released Sam Fox EP last year, which was more of a drum and bass type of
Mm.
release. And I actually met Sam at the Crazeroni show that we were both supporting last year, and he's like, yeah, Space Yacht's starting to release a lot more D&B, so you should send some stuff over. And they have a pretty cool platform for taking new music, which is a bi-weekly sort of tune reactor stream that they do, where Hidden Hen and London Bridge, the guys who own the label, they accept your demos. There, you submit a $10 or $15 donation to sort of help support the stream, and then you get guaranteed that your song will be listened to on stream. So, I picked one that I thought was good, which was this collaboration with my buddy DMTR over in the Netherlands that we've been holding on to for a couple of years there. Got played first out at Rampage last year. And
Wow.
we were just trying to find the right home for it. And then their reaction to it on the stream was so great, and nice to see them just getting slapped in the face by a drum and bass track instead of a rhythm track and really enjoying it. And yeah, they hit me up and we're like, can we put this first on our upcoming VA? And yeah, of course you can. That sounds like a great way to promote it. So got
Wow.
that on there. Working on some music for potentially an EP for them in the future. Don't know if that will come together because it has to be the right style. And sometimes I get a bit experimental, but yeah, getting that release was awesome. And they're running huge shows across, San Diego, San Francisco, LA, all the big scenes here. They do everything from tech house to drum and bass events. And in talking to Henry, it's a little harder for them to get bass events scheduled in San Francisco because the scene, particularly where I live, is just much more techno and house oriented. But they're doing a rooftop bass party with Noise Zoo in a few weeks, right across the street from my apartment. I'll be able to see it actually. So I might go over and
Wow.
check that out and try to meet some of the guys a little bit more. But I'm hoping some live show opportunities come from that to sort of play to a larger US audience that knows the imprint but doesn't necessarily know drum and bass. And then, if they're there for rhythm and for some heavier bass music, a 3-deck neurofunk set is always going to do well, I think. So we'll see. We'll see if that opportunity comes up. But really like the guys over there, and hopefully you can connect with them and do some more stuff in the future as well. They really deserve some more recognition for what they're doing for the scene over here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I actually thought that you put Henry in touch with me because Henry has been in touch with me. And Henry, if you're watching and I still haven't replied to you, apologies. What I was saying earlier about taking a long time to get back to people, but I do. I see them as kind of like a young version of Ausler in a way. That type of really cool, cutting edge, but big, big, big sounding. So the type of bass that you could play to thousands of people, but it's still underground and still got that culture about it. Really, I'm right on the cutting edge as well. So yeah, I mean, from that release, there have been many other releases as well, but I don't want to get into that thing where you've got to name everybody and then you're worried about missing people out. You mentioned the word experimental. You've been referring to yourself as a neurofunk artist, but with experimental research and with other releases that you've done as well. This isn't unique, but I would say that this is quite far out. Experimental research is a whole other side to Skorpion, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked on some 140, released some lo-fi, released kind of across genres. I made that decision early last year that I was going to go with the single alias and just release all the music that I liked under that, because I can't do the social media for multiple aliases. That's too much for
Yeah.
me. But yeah, this is definitely a bit more experimental than even the Shadows or some of the standard sort of 140 deep dub stuff. But that was really inspired just by you telling me to get as experimental as I wanted to get. So that sort of gave me a little bit more freedom to not design the music towards what the label might like. And I had these ideas that I wanted to work out in my head, and this was the opportunity to do them and potentially even get support on them rather than just releasing them as free downloads on SoundCloud. So, I had to do that. And for the first track, the experimental research track, that sort of drove the direction of the sound. And I've been experimenting a lot with like tribal drum sounds and these sort of out there, hand drum percussions and things like that. And I was thinking people usually use them as sort of percussive hits or like, notes in a more standard drum line, but I wanted to create a really driving sort of emotional bass/drum line that was all built with just tribal percussions. So that's kind of what I was going for with that first track there. And it definitely took on a bit of a psychedelic sort of spin with it, very floating to very driving, which sort of reminded me of like a peak psychedelic experience where you kind of float in between these driving emotional experience and more floating reveries. So yeah, it was been so much fun to
Definitely.
work on.
Brilliant. I mean, let's just go kind of dwell on each track for a moment. Because you've mentioned in that you've sent me over some little descriptions. You've just touched on it there with kind of psychedelics and stuff. And this is kind of inspired by a DMT trip, which is very different to other psychedelic experiences, isn't it, really? Do you
Yeah.
use it regularly? Can I ask your relationship with psychedelics and stuff?
Yeah, my relationship with psychedelics, I guess, I've used them as a way to sort of expand my mind and try to become a more meditative and calm person, as I was mentioning earlier. Um, During my time growing up, and I guess when I first got into music, I enjoyed heavy music as a sort of release for this sort of violent and negative energy that I felt bottled up inside all the time. You know, you can go to these shows, you can feel these feelings of rage and animosity towards society, and you can charge forward into a mosh pit and bump into some other big guys that want to do the same thing and release that energy in a safe way rather than, you know,
Mm,
getting into a bar fight or something like that. So I really have always appreciated that from the bass genres. But as I've sort of grown up and gotten more into adulthood, I've wanted to sort of be a calmer, more empathic person that can relate to people better and, you know, be a better influence on people around me. So I think psychedelics have been really instrumental in that way for me, taking a different perspective and looking at life and thinking, you know, we're all sort of here on a very short time span for what we think are different reasons. But at the end of the day, we just should be supporting each other and trying to make everybody's lives as good as possible. So I
yes.
think for that, it's been really great for me. And sure, sometimes you just want to take some and have fun in the woods, like this weekend, jumping around, listening to music again. But overall, I think I took them as a bit of a more religious sort of thing to try to improve your life without religion. You know, there's other ways to be a good person and to see things in a nice light. Um, I don't know
Amazing.
about for you.
Yeah. Oh, you've really, really summed up a lot of how I feel about things there. I didn't want to butt in. I'm sitting there like my whole body is nodding inside. Definitely. And I think, you know, you can tell, especially with stuff, I haven't had as much DMT experience. I haven't broken through on it very many times. I vaped it and it's been a tickle, but never. I don't like the fact that it's always the same, but I like the variation of psilocybin. It's a free for all and anything goes, and you don't really know. And if you completely lean into it and just open yourself out to that, conversation wise, interaction wise, it drops my anxieties. Like, and it's never too much. It's not like a hero dose or anything, but when I've had a tickle of it, then it can just make me realize a bit like you're saying, like, you know, like yeah, we're all just these kind of weird living things on a rock floating through space for an insignificant amount of time when you compare it into the vast expanse of space and time and everything
Yeah.
like that. Like we're literally here for pow and then we're gone again.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you realize the futility of it or the silliness of all of the hang-ups that we
Yeah,
have.
exactly.
And that
So
I personally have, as you know, especially, but as human beings, we're weird, aren't we? And it helps you appreciate and embrace the weird, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely. And like you said, everybody's kind of feeling a similar experience in their head, whether you think so or not. And whatever they portray to the world, we're all feeling sort of these depressive anxiety feelings. And a lot of the time, that's just part of the human existence. So being able to recognize and confront those is really great. And like you said,
Mm.
like smaller doses, especially even micro doses for mental health on a regular basis can be really powerful things. And can be more powerful than these antidepressives that we've marketed to the masses. So, you know, the future is in our hands and is still sort of coming into the world as being appreciated as medicines. And I think we're going to get closer to that time in the next few years. So,
Definitely, and also with yourself. I mean, you are a chemist. You you've graduated at a high level. You went to Harvard. You're an intelligent guy, and you are a chemist, aren't you? So I don't
I
know
went
what
to
type of chemist or like. I don't want to jeopardize your career, but I guess if you're talking about it in an interview and we're talking about like if there's any point where this is getting too awkward or getting into dangerous territory, please say. But as a chemist on a molecular level or on a I guess is molecular. I think that's on a chemist level, on a like on a scientific level.
yes.
You know, obviously you're not talking, you're talking with quite a bit of backup and knowledge and research and faith in what psychedelics can do. This is in, kind of crackpot theories for you or stuff you've read on Reddit and things like that, is it? This
Yes.
is shit that you've been studying and know a lot about the effects on the brain and stuff like that, I'm assuming.
Yes, absolutely. So I did go to Yale, not Harvard, but I have a
Oh shit.
close one.
Oh
It's
no.
okay. They're direct competitors, but yeah, I have a bachelor's in science and biochemistry, and then a PhD in synthetic chemistry and chemical biology. So the research that I do currently is at a small pharmaceutical company, and I'm leading a project where we're designing drugs to target a particular type of leukemia. So that's the standard workflow. That's the pharma industry. We're almost always working on different cancer targets, sometimes inflammation targets, things like that. But again, all towards the goal of helping people live better, longer lives where we can. There's a lot of you know contention over how we do things because the pharma companies still have to make money at the end of the day, and there's all these things about how much the drugs cost when they finally get to market. But people don't always realize the tens of years and billions of dollars of money that go into making the drugs. So the industry is definitely an interesting place to work, and it's intellectually stimulating for sure, and it's a great way to use the other side of your brain other than making music, working in science. So I definitely like that. But absolutely, like you're saying, I mean, I work in small molecule drug design, and the psychedelics we're talking about are some of the original small molecules that inspired a lot of people to become interested in these things. So um, I think a lot of chemists have a genuine natural interest in psychedelics and in natural compounds that have effects on humans, because not just psychedelics, but we've been isolating materials from sea sponges and different locations for years that end up being great, antibacterials or antivirals, and we can take them and understand their activity in these different ways. And it's all just the ways that these little guys interact with receptors in our brain. So we can keep making ones that we think will do better, but it's just so remarkable how these ones that naturally existed outside of LSD, which we created ourselves, but yeah, it's just remarkable the power of these drugs. These are things that have the effects that you would think would take tens of years, 20s of years to work through in pharma, and maybe you would eventually develop psilocybin as an antidepressive or as a mood stabilizer or something like that. But instead, because it existed in this sort of medicinal state within plants, people took it and were like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this, or oh, we should be doing this even more because it came from plants. So it's hard to say why people get the stigma that they do. Obviously, it's kind of a cultural thing and laws have been laid out, but the stigma is changing. And yeah, absolutely. I think it's really an interesting field right now for seeing how psychedelics will become medicines.
Yeah, I've got a lot of hope in that for the future, and it blows my mind. I wish I was more well read, better educated, and had the right type of brain for science. My partner is the scientific one. I'm the more fiery, sporadic, impulsive, creative one, I guess. Maybe. But there's normally the both in a relationship. But like she's taught me loads and loads about science and came from that side, and it blows my mind. So yeah, congratulations on having an awesome day job which really fulfills you, and an awesome, kind of high level hobby with music and performance and stuff. Like yeah, your life is rich, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great you got to keep yourself busy and have lots of avenues. And I'm definitely really glad that I started making music. I guess what is it, like almost 7 years ago now.
I knew this day would come.
Actually, the original project was sent over to me by Diviscio. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. It's all caps, Divicioux. And he's
Yeah.
another Netherlands, Belgium type of producer that I don't think I actually ran into him at Rampage, but he may have been there as well. But we started working on this track. It was at 160, and we were trying to decide between drum and bass and 160, and it was kind of that original drop melody of this ba-dum bum that sort of inspired me. And for me, a lot of the time I end up adding some spoken words that I record with my own microphone, and that sort of will really inspire my direction for the tune. So for me, I was
Oh,
like, this
cool.
really this really sounds like, to me, you're rising up to heaven, and then maybe you've reached the gates of judgment, and there's Peter with his book, and he's going to read out to you your judgment, and then this is cascading down on you, and maybe you expect it to be good enough, but you're not, that kind of thing.
Ah.
So that's why I recorded, Judgment Day, and that this day will come, that kind of stuff, and just trying to create a different vibe with that. So we went back and forth on that tune for quite a few months with a few different projects. And then Divisho has sort of decided to pivot specifically towards this future melodic drum and bass that he's calling sort of Future Ashes is his sort of new moniker that he's going with for that. So
Cool.
after a while, the track just wasn't really fitting the direction that he was going for his project. So he said, if you want to take this for a solo track, that would be totally fine with me. So I continued to develop the idea there and carry it to where it was here. And I'm super excited to be able to put it out. I think it fits really well with the EP as sort of the peak of intensity within the 4 tracks. I would say in terms of both BPM and maybe sound selection, it's on the aggressive side. But
Yeah,
I've heard you managed to fit it into a couple sets. You never know how these things will fit, but it's great because I love that you're doing all this experimental DJing and really trying to blend all these styles because it gives a chance for these weird tunes to be shown out, and it's really cool to see every time. So.
Yeah, it takes a bit of time and it takes a little bit of working out. At the moment, I'm trying to work out because I used Judgment at the start of my Renegade Rhythms mix. And that was a case of just mixing out using the soundscape at the end and soundscape of another track. I just couldn't, because that was the particular tracks that I wanted to mix. But I think that would be quite easy. The experimental research, that's the real tricky one. And I've got to loop that kind of on the breakdown, really. But I like that. We've got the technology to allow us to do that. It means you've got to do something a bit different. It means you're not following the usual kind of patterns that every other DJ seems to be doing, but they're not because every DJ really is different. But at a kind of base level, there are techniques which everybody seems to use, especially within drum and bass. And I don't want to use any of them. I don't want to use a lot of them, and plus I'm not very good at double dropping and doing fake out drops and having weaving 10 seconds of one tune in and then another. Other DJs can do that. I want the weird stuff because then it pushes you in a corner, it makes you be creative. I want to know though, do you think if there happens to be a Pearly Gates, hypothetically, and a Peter there standing, which is funny because my brother's called Peter and he would be the type of person who would judge you standing there. Sorry, Peter, if you ever watch this. But yeah, do you think they'd let you in?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think we all have our own perceptions of right and wrong and what makes you a good person, right? So I was raised in sort of a religious environment that I sort of moved away from over time, not really seeing the benefit to judging people in these ways and judging right and wrong in these rule-driven ways by a book that's been written many centuries ago. So for me, I've kind of thought, if you're a good person, you follow the voice inside of you, your conscience, right? As long as you keep your conscience soft and you feel empathic towards others and you do things that make you feel like you're doing the right thing, as long as you don't silence that voice inside of you, that's what was given to you to enable you to learn right from wrong. It's inside of all of us. It doesn't have to be taught from a book. So from that perspective, I'd love to think that, I'm in a pretty good place. Hopefully I try to help those around me, try to be good, try to create music for the world, not pain, things like that. So I'd love to think so, but hey, you never know. The religions could be right at the end of the day too. We really will never know. We
really will never know until until it's too late. Are you familiar with a UK sci-fi comedy called Red Dwarf? This might be a little bit. Right. So it's from like the 90s mainly. Still exists now, but not quite as much. But there's an episode where they arrive at a kind of judgment scenario and the person judging them is themselves. And that's ever since watching that, I know that I'd never get in. If it is me judging me, then I ain't getting in. Simple as that. I'll just take a one-way ticket to hell straight off the bat. No. But speaking of hell, tell me all about Devil's Drudgery. And this is probably, I don't know, I'm torn between this and To the Head as my favorite. But tell me all about Devil's Drudgery.
The devil himself.
There was a neat idea for this one. Not dubstep like rhythm, but I wanted to make like a deeper driving dubstep type of song. But I really wanted to have basically one MIDI note play throughout the entire track that sort of evolved with just automation with different plugins to create different grooves as it sort of evolved, and even textures with echoes and delays. So that's sort of that main synth that boom, 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 that sort of goes through the entire track and picks up in intensity. So that's a single lane of automation with patterns and various textural evolutions, which I thought was really fun to make. But the inspiration for this idea from a more philosophical perspective, I guess, was, every day is sort of sometimes a broken repetition of itself. And we do these things with very small iterative differences. Maybe you put butter on your toast for breakfast this day and you put jam on your toast for butter the next, or instead of butter the next day, right? But a lot of times we live our lives in very repetitive, methodical ways, which can make time seem to pass a lot faster because you're not doing things that are diverse and interesting that sort of slow down the perception of the passage of time. So I was thinking, there's this broken repetition. Let's put that into a track where each section there's a little bit of repetition, a little bit changes, but then all of a sudden at the end of the track, you're somewhere very different from where you started. So that was really fun to make and just try to evolve that single sound throughout the entire track of, this is butter and now it's jam. So I had a lot of fun
Brilliant.
making that one. Yeah, I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, cool. That's a bit of a metaphor for life because we do that, but incrementally, and you don't notice the change until you've got to the change. Hopefully, it's often when you're trying to change and improve, then it's usually a positive change. It can be a incredibly negative or toxic, but these things do happen incrementally over time, really, don't they? That's
Yeah.
fascinating. That's fascinating. And I love the way that's really interesting, like the actual technique as well that you did, because it cuts in that kind of tone that you're talking about, the way that Devil's Drudgery cuts into the mix when you mix it in.
Yeah.
That is a very just this a nice that's got that kind of crisp drop like that. Just it's very springy.
Yeah, it's a little bit more mixable for sure. And yeah, like we were talking about before a little bit, so many people, including myself and I guess yourself, suffer somewhat from anxiety and depression. And I think that can often make you fall more into more simple repetitions because oftentimes times of change or times of doing something different can lead to extra anxiety in people that suffer from this kind of stuff because changing is just a trigger, I guess, to more anxiety and more depression. So people will fall into these patterns of just sitting on the couch watching TV, just eating the same thing, that kind of stuff. So it's really important to try to break out of it. And that's kind of why I went for Devil's Drudgery instead of just drudgery. I think it's pretty bad that we fall into these patterns and it can be a negative impact on our mental health and on our path of life. So I think it's important to try to go to a festival, every once in a while, try to do something different with your weekend and get out in nature, that kind of thing. So breaking out of that
Definitely.
Devil's Drudgery will help you get to the head.
Yeah, completely. Awesome segue. Brilliant segue. That's perfect there to tell me all about To the Head. And I know that you know that I've mixed this one loads as well because I've been playing this one quite a lot as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think this one's my favorite one, and for me from the EP as far as the production style goes, and it is definitely pretty mixable with a lot of space in the mix, which is cool too. A lot of times I tend to create pretty dense mixes that are a bit hard to mix in, but this one was super inspired by these broken beats that we've been hearing from some cool artists in the scene lately. I'm thinking of Late Sleeper, Ivy Lab, and Gyrofield, particularly, where it's just grooves that you really have not heard before. It's a different drum pattern. It's unique. Um, and yeah, this one's kind of inspired also by this theme of judgment. So we often judge ourselves, as you just mentioned. You would see yourself judging yourself and you wouldn't like where that would lead you. But
Oh, absolutely.
we need to soften our opinions of ourselves. We put so much criticism on ourselves, whether it's in the music that we're making. I know so many people who make fantastic music and then they judge themselves so critically that they never release it, and they're
Oh God,
depriving
yeah.
the world of this music that they've created and spent time making. And just because one person might tell you that your snare drum isn't snappy enough, or your bass needs to be raised 2 decibels, that doesn't mean you didn't create a piece of art that people should be hearing and could appreciate. So I'm always encouraging people, the music is good enough if you feel like it's good. So you know
Yeah.
yeah, for this one, I just wanted to create something spacey and groovy, but inspired by this sort of self-judgment. So, you take this judgment to your head and you let it influence yourself. It's all just in your own head, and we're all really good enough at the end of the day. And there's going to be people that appreciate you for you and what you're doing. So just put it out there and have fun with this life that we have.
Yes, brilliant. Lots and lots of inspiring and motivational stuff going on there. And there is there's a really good theme in between all of these tracks, really. Were they all written around about the same time in your life or around about the same kind of mindset?
Yeah, actually, these were all kind of around the similar time. I sent you kind of a large playlist that we eventually boiled down to these 4 tracks, but these ones, yeah, I produced all of these probably within 2 months or so. So definitely was a bit of a path of creation with with a plan here. And I guess I was probably at a bit of a sad point mentally at the time, and trying to drive myself out of that by making some tracks that were inspired by personal growth and escaping from self-criticism and judgment. So yeah, I'm really happy
Brilliant.
with how it turned out.
Yeah, yeah, and that's great to have them all in one EP then together. That's a real kind of sense of closure there, instead of like, one being on one compilation and one being on another or anything. These really do tell a very personal story, don't they?
Yeah, I think that's always should be something that you try to do with an EP. So I have another 4 tracks I've been working on for a second EP, but these ones are also way out there. So we'll see if it ends up landing somewhere or if I do it myself. And this one is a bit more on the emotional positive side. So we'll see where that goes.
Oh, cool. So like the yin compared to this yang, then in a way,
Yeah,
like
in a
cool.
way, yeah.
I'd be very interested in hearing that as well. Like,
Yeah, I
cool,
could I
cool.
could send it over.
Brilliant. So you've given us a track by track now. Now I've also asked you for your favorite Scorpions, and then I think then we're going to close out. I mean, anybody who's really been paying very close attention to One More Thing will have already read how you got your name as Scorpion. But that's where we're gonna close for anybody who doesn't already know, because I think it's an amazing story. But first of
Yeah.
all, you are called Scorpion. I have to ask you your favorite Scorpions. It's a ridiculous, silly kind of press style question. I'm surprised. Has anybody asked you this before?
No one's asked me about the favorite scorpions. We've talked a little bit about how I got the name, which I can go back over really quickly. But yeah, back when I was in college in Texas, we have lots of scorpions down there, and they don't always stay in their place out in the sand. So sometimes they do like to come into your house for a little air conditioning or maybe a dropped crumb here or there. I don't really know what they eat, but
They just pop
yeah,
in and say
they
hiya.
just drop in, say hi, like pinch you a couple times. Yeah. So it was during college and I was just sleeping in my bed, and all of a sudden I was jumped out of bed like I had just received the worst pain I had felt in a long time. And I looked around trying to figure out what was going on. And there were these 2 little scorpions in my bed, one just sitting there by my pillow and one down by my butt that had sort of flown off the bed when I jumped up. And then that's the one that bit me. So they were traveling in a group of 2 getting ready to just fuck me up, I guess. And they got in my bed, and there it was. I got jumped out of bed, bit by the scorpions. So it was sort of one of those Peter Parker Spider-Man type of deals where I was telling my friends about this, and this was around the time that I was starting to get into making music and come up with an alias. So they were like, "Oh, you've got to be Scorpion," and then we thought, "Okay, let's put a K in there instead of a C, so it's a little more search optimized, and you can type it in and not just get Rock You Like a Hurricane every single time." But favorite scorpions,
Brilliant.
yeah, there's some pretty nice ones out there. I'm a big fan of the big black scary scorpions, the sort of African ones. So you got the emperor scorpion, which is the giant West African armored scorpion. Those ones you wouldn't want to run across, I don't think. Those ones are
No,
pretty
definitely
terrifying.
not. I've been watching videos of all of these in preparation for this call. I mean, anything which has got armored in the description, any actual natural organism which has been described as armored, you know that you're not going to fuck around with that or anything. Or the name Emperor as well,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, that one's gnarly to begin with. So Emperor Scorpion, Emperor the artist, if you're out there, let's work on a collab, that would be pretty fun.
Oh, yeah, go on, do it, kind of do it.
The second favorite one, I've got the Heterometrus spinifier scorpion, which is also a great name, I think. Those ones you
Yeah,
find in
yeah.
West Asian forests, and they actually spin webs, apparently, of some kind. So that's pretty unique to the scorpion clan, like a scorpion, a spider type of hybrid. Um,
Yeah.
Another one
Also,
that's
10
really,
out of 10 for the name as well, like Spinifire as well. They make good DJs.
yeah, they could be DJs as well, right? And then the Death Stalker, which is also a crazy name. Those ones have the most
Yeah.
toxic venom, so stay away from those ones. Stay away from venomous. Stay away from armored. You should be on a good path. Luckily, the ones that bit me were just these little rascal ones that don't really have poison. They just hurt like bastards. So
Little
didn't have to go.
rascal
Yeah,
ones.
didn't have to
Brilliant.
go to the ER or anything for poisons. That was good. And then another one that's great is the giant hairy scorpion. So we've got some
Brilliant.
that have armor, we've got some that have webs, and we've got some that are hairy. So scorpions kind of take it all over the place in terms of their species and populations. So it's pretty interesting. And then the last
Yeah,
one
I
I've
think
got scorpion.
if I was a
Yes.
scorpion, I would definitely be a giant hairy scorpion. I think that, or unless you can have a giant hairy spinifier, if a spinifier and a giant hairy scorpion created a new breed, then a giant hairy spinifier. In fact, that could well be my new alias. If you ever see any music out under that name, it might well be
I
me.
mean, yeah, I could see that one on Vision Radio and Martine getting really confused. Giant hairy spinifier next up.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Cool. And
that's
your fifth and final favorite Scorpion.
well, fifth and final. I had to put them at the bottom of the list, but we've got Scorpions, the band. They are pretty iconic with their tracks like Rock Me Like a Hurricane. But my
Mm.
my gripe with them is that when I search Scorpion with a K or Scorpion music with a K, somehow they still have me beaten on the algorithm. So I just need to get a little bigger so that when you type Scorpion with a K, you get my music instead of Rock Me Like a Hurricane, and then I can move Scorpions back up the list to a higher position in the rankings. But those are five great
Brilliant.
Scorpions.
Oh, I love that. Thank you very much. I mean, you mentioned right at the start when we were talking about kind of coming from different musical backgrounds and your love for heavy music and kind of thrashing it out to begin with, like early musical passions. You came from a rock background, I believe, didn't you?
Yeah, I've always liked when I was growing up as a younger guy, like metalcore and sort of the heavier aggressive side of heavy rock, not necessarily getting into like the guttural death metal screeching. I like things that have sort of passionate, raspy male vocals usually that sort of can really hit you in the heart while there's some intense drum and bass lines playing. Still love to listen to
Yeah.
that sort of music. Kill Switch Engage comes to mind. Artists like that sort of are in this nice niche of really emotional, passionate rock music. So I still love listening to that type of stuff at the gym. Oftentimes, those sort of tracks will inspire me as well. I actually just commissioned Akov, who you might know of for some metal vocals for a Neurofunk track. So,
Wow, brilliant, brilliant.
yeah, I
He's
heard
done, I can't remember what's the name of his metal alias. It's got
it's
an
it's Enigma. So he has a full metal
Enigma.
band with
That's it.
his group called Enigma, and I really enjoyed their debut EP from an artistic perspective of metal even. And then he recently did a collaboration with Audio on his album, the Blood on Your Hands track. And that one was my
Yes.
favorite from Audio's album. It just really spoke to me. I love those, passionate sort of choral metal vocals that lead into just a disgusting neurofunk drop. So I hit him up on Instagram and I was like, I might be too small of an artist, but I would love to commission some vocals from you. So he's working on some original D sharp minor vocals for me for a nice neurofunk track, and I'm super excited to work on that in the future.
Brilliant, brilliant. I can't imagine any artist being too big or small, knowing Alex and having spoken to him and stuff like that before. Like he doesn't, it wouldn't matter what level you are. It's what you want to do. It's your intention. It's the creative purpose. He would, if you want to collaborate on that level, yeah, he's not one for numbers or status or anything like that. He's one of the real ones. That's
Oh yeah.
amazing to know that you two are going to be on a track together with a heavy metal twist as
Yeah,
well.
super
Brilliant.
excited to work on that one.
Brilliant. I can't wait to hear that. What else is coming up? Let's sign out with some teasy bits for the future that comes after experimental research.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, before experimental research, just today I have a pure piano lo-fi track releasing on the Brazilian label Regroup Records. So this one,
Wow.
just piano and drums, nothing else in there. It's called Piano Reverie. And I was really trying to work on just writing emotional piano chords, melodies, and counter melodies, really working on the arrangement of the track with fermatas that sort of allow you to feel like there's a drop when it's just a piano melody coming back in. And I don't know a lot about the label, but I find all these labels through the service Label Radar, which is just an outstanding place to send your music places. You can send your music to Circus, you can send it to Viper Recordings, you can send it to NCS. They have lots of big labels on this platform, and it's guaranteed to get heard. And things that I don't really expect to get released by a certain label, oftentimes they do end up liking. So it's great to be able to submit through that platform. And
Wow. That
yeah,
seems like a really good tip for anybody watching. So that's Label Radar. That's not
Label
something I've
Radar, I've
ever
been
heard of.
using them now for probably 3 or 4 years, and it's been growing impressively, and they keep adding features, and just the way that they've designed the site is so user oriented, and it's so easy to get your music heard rather than sending these email demo drops. So I'm always shouting out Label Radar to everybody that will listen, and whenever I release songs from a label that I've signed with them, I make sure to note that in there as well so that people are aware you can make connections to these great labels on here.
Brilliant.
So super stoked about that one. Next week, I've got a dance floor drum and bass track coming out. I collaborated with Finnish artist DJ Newfie. on a track called Everything. That'll be out on his label called Seashore Beats, which is pretty exciting. That one's a fun one for sure. I've been playing it lately. And then of course the week after that we've got Experimental Research. So really excited to get that out and see what people think about it. In the next couple months, we've got a few more things coming. I've got another drum and bass track next month with Astrolus, a Slovakian artist that I collaborated with, called Let Me In. It's another dance floor sort of female vocal led drum and bass track. So we're going back to dance floor drum and bass for the next few drum and bass releases. And then next month as well, I'll be releasing a podcast mix for All 172 Things. I think you're familiar with them over in Spain. Released a collaboration with their free download series with Scepter. And he asked me for just the most blistering neurofunk mix that I could come up with. So we've got 55 tracks in 35 minutes at 178 BPM. That I think really shows the range of emotion in modern neurofunk. And these are all going to be tracks that have been coming out in the last few months and weeks. So really excited to get that out there and kind of show my true potential as a neurofunk DJ, because I really like to show what can be done with these kind of tracks, mixing in a very intense style.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's like 30 seconds per tune. Or do you have a lot of things rolling together, 2 or 3 tunes rolling
pretty
together?
Pretty much always 3 tracks playing at once, and we're mixing in the intro of the next tune into the last 16 that's always playing at the last tune. So it's pretty much 2 bars of two 16-bar sections of each track that play, always with another intro or outro going on in the background, kind of thing. But if you align it perfectly, you just have to pick the tracks really well. And when people ask kind of how I've managed to do that, it's the secret is Not Equal Patreon tracks. So the guys Not Equal, you're probably familiar with. They're absolutely crushing it in the neurofunk game. But I've been in their Patreon for years now. Absu is one of my favorite guys. He's just, a fellow cat-loving neurofunk producer who's just a great down-to-earth guy over there. So the tracks that they release, particularly on Patreon, I find them to be just perfectly arranged in such a way that they're the glue that you can mix in and out of at any section, and you can really just change the style. So you'll see a lot of those tracks in the mix, a lot of Not Equal, but it's a great mix. We've got Audio, Ed Rush, a lot of my own tunes in there from the latest albums. So really stoked to get that one out there. And then a little bit later in the summer, we've got the Heavy Sonics VA coming out, which will be really exciting. I've got a collaboration with Scepter on there. That will be our third release together. And those guys are doing a great job. Later on in July, releasing a deep garage single on Different Records in Spain, which is another one that I released or signed through label Radar. And then to end off the summer, we've got the Disciples of Distortion 3rd compilation coming on Stonks. So you can expect some gnarly neurofunk from the whole gang on there. So a lot coming up. Yeah, really excited about everything. Hoping to get some more live shows scheduled in there soon too. And we're even discussing yesterday at the festival, trying to arrange sort of a UK and then Amsterdam and Belgium sort of takeover with Momentum drum and bass. So maybe you'll see a across the pond tour from some of us US artists here before too long, and we can make something happen with some little events.
Sick. I'd be really interested in working with you on that if there was any type of UK edition or something like that. Really, you never know where these things lead. And the last time I worked with a North American actor, and it was Flo Anastasia and Tia Kahoo, and we launched their drum and bass honeymoon on a boat party. And then in a few weeks' time, literally a month after this EP drops, I'm hosting them again at Rampage Festival, Rampage Open Air. So these things kind of work. You don't really know.
Year. I can't make it this year, but I'm super stoked to watch it online and see everybody playing.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait. Like it's going to be a crazy summer, and it does kick off really with experimental research. So brilliant. Thank you so much, Jake, for the music, for your time, for your stories, and for the fact that some little rascal scorpions bit you on the bum and started you on this crazy path. Well, actually, music did, but let's big up those little scorpions as well.
Yeah, big up scorpions.
Amazing. And thank you to everybody who's watched this interview. Please go out. All of the links are in the comments and stuff like that. Please support this awesome and very unique and forward-thinking EP. We'll be back soon. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, man.